Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast, Finding Your Flow. I'm so excited to have you here. So, I want to welcome you to our new season of this transformational podcast, and it's called My Intuition Made Me Do It. I'm your host, Jennifer Jane Young, and I'm here to ignite inspiration within you. I'm the author of Say Yes to Your Yes, How to Trust Your Gut and Take the Leap, and the visionary behind the School of Intuitive Leadership. I've dedicated my life to empowering individuals to trust their intuition and lead their lives from that powerful inner wisdom. Through my work as an international speaker and intuitive leadership advisor, I've witnessed the transformative power of following one's intuition firsthand with entrepreneurs and organizations around the world. This season, we're diving deep into the stories of people who dare to listen to their inner voice and take the leap. Join us as we unravel the mysteries of intuition, sharing captivating experiences that will reignite your belief in the incredible guidance within you. Get ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery and empowerment. It's time to embrace the clarity and courage that comes from trusting your intuition. So sit back, relax, and prepare to be inspired into action. Your dreams are waiting. Let's make them a reality together. Well, Patrick, I am so excited to have you here on the podcast today. You have been a very, very inspiring person to me from the first moment we met. Like I was sharing before, there are some men in my life that I really feel like are incredible leaders and paving the path for some really big impact in the world. And you are in that bucket of men for me. So I'm excited to hear. Well, I've heard part of this story, but I'm excited for us to dive deeper into it today. And I think it's going to be really, really inspiring for people to hear about your journey. So we're in the season of My Intuition Made Me Do It. So the first question is, what did your intuition make you do?
Oh, that's a really good question. It obviously it's worked in multiple stages in my life and multiple parts, but I think the first place we can start is my intuition led me at a very early age, at the age of 19. And I was in my freshman year of college out here at the University of New Mexico pursuing my degree in exercise science. And having been an athlete up until the collegiate level, I just knew I wanted to make sure that play and consistent movement was a reliable part of my life from that point on. And I wanted to make sure that I was not sacrificing my health to just pursue monetary wealth, which we see is so prevalent and pervasive in at least Western culture, as well as just in the broader entrepreneurial space. So at a very young age, I was like, I know this is important. I got to find a way to make this happen. And what really catalyzed that decision, I guess you can say, or the catalyst behind that decision was as I was learning more and more information during university, I was having a conversation with a family member at the time, and I've learned that my experience is not very uncommon to most individuals, and that the majority of my family doesn't prioritize their health to as deep of a degree. So obviously their viewpoints around taking care of their health are much different. I've heard from many clients and individuals that they hear their family saying, bad health just runs in the family, right? And I was sharing with this family member just what I was learning from school. I'm super excited about it. I'm seeing a path that I'm laying out. It's like, man, this is a reality. This is going to happen for me. And after sharing that with him, he eventually gets to the point of saying, "That's awesome. I'm happy to hear that. However," and he pats his stomach. He's like, "Doesn't matter what you do, you're going to end up unhealthy, overweight, and fat like all the male figures in my family." And at 19 years old, I just knew deep down that this just didn't jive with me, and I at that point in time, as I was full of a lot of raw emotion internally, I just told him, like, fuck you, watch me. Like I'm gonna I'll kind of the I'll show you type energy. But it was very true at the time, where it's like, man, this it sucks not having that kind of like deep rooted support from some family members. But as time went on, I came to understand like that's not an uncommon experience for most people, that you'll have something that you're super passionate about, that your tuition is guiding you towards on a very deep, visceral, I would argue almost, if not spiritual and soul level, to where you're connected to it. That's your compass. And people who are not in a space where they're able to or willing to understand will project their limiting beliefs on you. And that happened to me at a very early age, 18, 19 years old. And it continued to happen all throughout my 20s until, as of, I'd say, present day, where I've gone through all the trial and error of sifting through friend groups that don't value their health in the way that I value my health, and even significant others at the time, to being in a place where I have a pretty solid ecosystem through my wife, through my friends. And it's funny because it's even gotten to the point, although it wasn't my intention, that how we're doing things is inspiring family members to finally get on board and prioritize and take care of their health. So it's been very much from that point a process of, you don't get people to change by telling them what to do. You do it by inspiring them. And you do that by taking care of yourself first and just showing them. And then they make the decision as to whether or not that's a path they want to go down. So that's the first primary stage. So after having that experience, I had I had the opportunity to train in person at one of the top tier facilities here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at a young age, from pretty much my 20s up until early 20s, until about, I believe it was 28, 29, actually 30. And I had a lot of experience working with high performing individuals, business owners, CEOs, small business owners, really influential people in my community. And there was something I noticed during that time, especially being a personal trainer, was realizing that, man, movement or exercise alone is actually not helping get these individuals where they say they want to go.
Mm.
And starting to put some pieces together and understanding that there's more to this health and fitness game than just the external, right? There's way more to it than just showing up and working with your trainer 2 hours a week and expecting all your wildest health dreams to come true. And the reason I bring that up is it ties into a conversation you and I had prior to this podcast, where I had easily one of the most pivotal following my intuition moments in the summer of 22, the summer slash fall of 2022,
Mm.
where using my own experience as a reference, and I'm sure, like you had made mention, a lot of your male friends and colleagues have had similar experiences, where it's very, very prevalent in the male entrepreneurial space, to where there's a lot of what we call pushing down and pushing through,
Yeah.
where you're pushing down your emotions, you're pushing down your mental health, you're pushing down your spiritual well-being, in pursuit of all these external metrics, right? Financial success, all the other stuff that we as a society value, that in many cases lacks a lot of depth. And that was a framework that I had, that I was utilizing unknowingly throughout the majority of my 20s, because I was checking the box as far as exercise was concerned, but I was starting to realize, man, just exercising and eating healthy alone isn't doing it all for me. Like I feel like there's something missing. I'm not sure what it was. And eventually it came to a point of realizing it was my mental and emotional health.
Mm.
And that was where, at the age of 28, I leaned heavily into establishing a relationship with a mental health therapist, and just getting an understanding of that process, which led me to, in the summer and the fall of 2022, I was towards the middle to three quarters portion of a year-long mastermind that I was in, that was it was just very kind of zero bullshit, fuck your emotions type dynamic, that I was having a lot of conflicting feelings around, and being a part of that community, because yes, I aspired to achieve financial success. However, as a health professional who's continued to add multiple layers and dimension to my health and fitness journey, I was experiencing a substantial amount of like internal incongruence. And it reached this boiling point to where I was met to, how do I want to put it? I ran into a fork in the road, right? Towards like, well, I can, even though I've got this awareness of this historical pattern that I've had through my 20s of just like grind, 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 make money, at all costs, even at the expense of my mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. Um, I saw that as a path that I could decide to go down, which was what this mentor at the time really had laid out for him and his community. Or there was this other path, but this other path was going to result in me needing to pump the brakes rather substantially and employ even more in-depth help on the mental, emotional, and spiritual side of things so I could quite honestly process a lot of trauma that I experienced at a young age as a child, where a very heavy framework was laid in place for me, where the only way that I experienced deep amounts of love, acceptance, and validation was through performance and performance only. Having been an athlete, it was like if I did not perform well, things were murky on the emotional front, mainly when it came to my relationship with my father, but it also showed up through school, right? Like I needed to have the best grades. I needed to be the best on the field or on the court or whatever it was like. And I was seeing that that was coming up for me at the age of 32 at the time. So following my intuition, I decided, you know what? I'm going to continue to lean into my health because referencing my time working with a lot of high performers in my 20s, I couldn't fully put a name on it, but it was at this juncture that I was at, or junction that I was at, where I was able to really realize, oh, I think where I'm at right now is what I saw but couldn't put a name to when it came to working with a lot of high performing individuals, to where like they only knew that, yeah, part of the path of getting to where they wanted to go was, sure, exercise regularly, eat as healthy as you can, but there's a whole 23 hours of the day that's not being taken care of. And that represents your mental, your emotional, and your spiritual well-being. And so I pumped the brakes substantially and had to work through a lot of what we call like shadow work, a lot of dark night of the soul type stuff, which was really fucking hard. Like
No, right? It's
incredibly, incredibly difficult. And
yeah.
but was really trusting in the fact that, you know what, I'm doing this for my deep well-being and health, and I know that it's going to help improve my relationship with myself, build a healthier internal dialogue, improve my relationship with my wife, and make it way easier to navigate the entrepreneurial journey without my only fuel source being shame, blame, and judgment, where I'm like cattle prodding myself using pain to motivate me to do things, and really letting go of that, discarding it, decoupling myself from that, and being able to adopt a fuel source of love, of compassion, where it's like, yeah, I want my journey of growing a business to be fun. I want
Right.
to make my way through it, or on the other side, healthier than I came into it. And that's where we're at currently.
Oh, there's so many things in what you said, Patrick, that like are so important. I want to touch on the dark night of the soul work because I think that piece is really important. Um, and one of the reasons why people don't do that internal work is because it feels so scary and people are scared to feel things, right?
Yeah.
And I always say, if you're not willing to feel the hard stuff, it's going to be hard to feel the good stuff too, right? It's all the full spectrum of emotions is important. Um, what would you, and like I'm all about healing. It happens in my work all the time. It is part of any journey that we do at the School of Intuitive Leadership or when I'm working individually with someone. What would, now that you've like come out of, let's say, the deepest stuff, right? Because we continue, the healing journey just continues after.
Right.
Would you like to share with someone who's resisting doing this work? Like how has life shifted for you after that you did this really essential internal work for you?
Sure. Really good question. A couple things come to mind. First is something that you had made mention is like in the word that comes to mind for me is presence, right? Where we only look at presence through the most kind of like ideal set of circumstances, right? Like, oh, cool, I'll adopt presence when I'm feeling great, right? Like I that's what we only seem to kind of look at that word or define that word as, where it's also like you have to acknowledge the other side of it, where you're talking about what you made mention earlier is like in order to feel the good in life, you've got to be able to and willing to feel the bad.
Mhm.
And that's very much what my experience was like, where it's like, man, there's it was just a wild experience where it's just like, sure, I was still taking part in all the healthy behaviors, right? I was still getting adequate sleep, I was still eating healthy, I was still I was doing all the things that, you
Yeah.
know, is necessary to help live a healthy life. But it was a really wild stretch of time where it's like, man, I'm doing these things and I still feel like shit.
Mm.
Like just, and it's not, you know, for anybody listening, it's not encouraging you to not take part in healthy lifestyle behaviors, right? Because I knew better at the time and still currently that if I were to take part in unhealthy behaviors, whether it be food, lifestyle, substance use, etc., it would have made that experience in that season way harder to navigate and heal through. So, you know, you're asking as far as like thoughts, advice for individuals is presence falls on a continuum, I believe, and it's a skill set that has to be developed. And it's really, really difficult to develop that skill set in our culture that's just so full of stimulus all the time. So I think it would be difficult for me to just say, okay, you know, listen to your intuition if you haven't developed that skill or presence around it and just like jump right in, because you can't force that deep of work on somebody who's not ready. Because you know, you can push somebody into complete psychosis because like you're completely lifting the veil up around your reality and all this kind of stuff. So continuing to look at it through varying degrees of presence, especially if you've been raised in a family that didn't, like we were talking earlier about, like around a lot of stigma around mental and the stuff that isn't fully tangible, right? So, you know, my encouragement would be to, I think initially, like just do the best you can to give yourself space to just embrace. Cal Newport talks about it in his book Deep Work. Embrace boredom.
Mhm.
And you know, sitting in literally idle space. You can start by, you know, setting a timer for 5 minutes and just meditating, or looking out your window. In our living room, we've got a big front window that looks out to two trees in our front yard, and like just sit and exist and try to use that as an opportunity to notice what comes up as far as what you feel in your body, as well as the intellectual and mental narratives that
Yeah.
are tied to that. And that can at least, you know, if it helps to journal it and write it down so you can get it out of your head and onto paper, I think that can at least help you work through these small, subtle stages of varying degrees of getting that information out there so you can see that and ask yourself, like, is this narrative tied to this somatic or nervous system response? Is
Mhm.
this narrative my own voice, or is this a dialogue that was given to me from by somebody else?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's the first thing that comes to mind, because obviously it would be easy to say, yeah, obviously would always encourage, you know, reaching out for help, whether it's a friend or whoever you're most comfortable with, or a mental health therapist. But I know this is very much a stage by stage approach. Like I wouldn't have been able to do what I did last year if I had not made the decision that I made at the age of 19. Right? It's this process of compounding interest where it's like, man, this was really hard, but it, you know, I earned the, I guess, the opportunity, or I graduated to the opportunity to be prepared for this deep of work, if that makes sense.
Totally, totally. I mean, that the courage you had at 19 to like take this journey when everyone was like, yeah, that's not going to work. And that's what happens with so many people, is like they just let their conditioning and the people around them with their beliefs kind of decide on what their life is going to be. It's like, oh, okay, so I'll just settle for okayness, right?
Right.
I love that you did that. And I think, your advice is so powerful because really what you were talking about is like pushing down and pushing through or pushing forward. Um, that is what, like the pushing down, all of that stuff that's uncomfortable that we're pushing down is like creating layers on top of the feeling good stuff, right? And so you have to first let that first layer out of the feeling shit, and then
Yep.
you can feel the good stuff. And what you said is like just be and exist. I, there's a part of me like felt anxiety, and then a part of me felt peace. And I think this is what happens as humans, right?
Right.
I've been in this deep work for like decades also, but it is hard to just exist as humans because we have this idea that we have to be doing all the time to
Right.
have value. And like you said, when you were young, receiving love only when you performed well. Um, and it is a very incremental journey. It's like one step at a time. You cannot heal everything at once.
Right.
You have to just be ready to be in the process of it,
Right.
and and enjoy the process even when it's not always comfortable, because it brings um so much beauty after into your life. Um,
Right.
let's hit pause for just a second. I want to check in with you and see how you are feeling as you listen to this incredible story today. If you are feeling like you want to activate your yes and say yes to your yes, I invite you to take my Say Yes to Your Yes digital experience, which is a 12-week journey to intuitive mastery. This incredible transformational experience includes a digital copy of my book, Say Yes to Your Yes, and it will for sure activate your yes and inspire you into action so that you can live the life of your dreams. Head over to jenniferjaneyoung.com/course to start your journey today. All right, let's go back to today's incredible story. What would you say is in let's look at the last big leap that you took, like really going on to that spiritual and emotional healing journey. What would you say is the most important lesson from following your gut in that particular situation?
The first thing that comes to mind, and it continues to tie into this consistent thread and undercurrent that I had built at the age of 19, is like your health is the most valuable thing on this planet.
Yeah.
And even still at this stage of things, I've been coaching in the coaching, personal training, health and fitness space for well over a decade now. Even still, I can catch myself in bouts, especially during that difficult period of just feeling like you can feel a level of hopelessness, right? As far as like, especially when you are looking around you, or in my case, looking around me in the entrepreneurial space, and then being here in the States, looking around you and be like, nobody values any of this shit.
Mhm. We
Like,
value wealth, but we
yeah,
value health.
yeah, nobody values their health. And I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault. However, I think we're navigating a stage in our existence, not only here in Western culture, but globally,
Mhm.
where we're having to acknowledge our responsibility,
Yeah.
right? And that was a big thing for me, was like, well, a lot of what has happened to me was not my fault, but it's now my responsibility. I've got to take care of it. And it was very much acknowledging, well, most people, or most men at least, in the entrepreneurial space are not in a space where they're willing to dig their heels in and prioritize their deep health.
Right.
So they might have all the external wealth that let the outside world think or know that they've got it figured out, but I'm going to continue to lean in to my intuition. And those seeds were planted at a very young age. So it was me continuing to provide space for reminding myself, like, dude, from the get, like you've been on the path, and it's continuing to lean into that and trust that and know that if I take care of my health and always make that priority number one, everything else, to my wildest dreams, will come true, right? Because it comes back to that fuel source. It's like you're either utilizing the fuel source of your health in a healthy, congruent way to get you where you want to go, or you're using it as this purely like transactional um, fuel source where you're giving up your I can't remember who originally stated the quote. It's, people will spend their health in pursuit of wealth,
Mhm.
and then when they've obtained their wealth, they will try to then spend that wealth to reobtain their health. And that's what I was seeing in my 20s, coaching clients in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Like they were uber financially wealthy, and then they were trying to like make up for lost time, where it's like I give them credit for trying to take care of their health at the time, but it's like you're not going to get 30 years back. Like that it just doesn't work that way. So that was really what was going off very heavily in my head, is like you're on the right path despite, other people around you maybe not being in that space, but I'm gonna lean into it anyways.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so important. You know, when you said we don't get that time back, it's so true. And I don't know why. I think it's like bright and shiny to chase the success and the wealth versus chasing or like investing in our health and our well-being, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, like you say. But that is where the true freedom lies, is when you have a very healthy body, mind, emotional state. And like you said, from that place, it is limitless potential, literally. Um, I'm curious. I always ask this question. It's always a scary one for me, anyways, when I think back on my own story, when I think about this, and it's the fuel to keep following my gut. What do you think your life would look like today, or who would Patrick be today if you had not trusted your gut at 19 and if you had not embarked on this deep healing journey?
Um, yeah, it's kind of wild, scary to even think about, right? Like what is the parallel timeline or reality or universe of that decision look like for me? And, it's again, I want to be very clear, like I'm not coming from a place of shame, blame, or judgment towards anybody that may be in a similar position. However, this is just providing context where it's like I feel like I would be experiencing the average state of existence that we see the vast majority of people living, where they're just kind of living day to day, right? Where it's very much a matter of like I would be in a very poor state of mental, emotional, spiritual, social environment. Like all dimensions of my health would be very poor, and I wouldn't know it.
Yeah.
Right. And it would reinforce this mindset of like, well, this is what it is, much like what my family member had shared with me at the age of 18. Right. Like it's impossible to try and stretch the boundaries of the the health or lack thereof framework that's been given to you by your family, that's been given to you by society. So it would very much be a matter of just going with the current,
Mm-hmm.
just because that's what has been put in place for me, and never questioning it, and continuing to have my self-worth be deeply tied up in my ability to be productive. And if I'm not productive all the time, then I'm not worthy,
Mm.
right? And yeah, and just see that play out to where, because I see it all the time with individuals we speak with, and in some cases clients we work with, where there's just I would have a lack of awareness of understanding like how my life got to where it was at, right? Because there's this positive compounding interest, and we can have negative compounding interest where I would have no idea why my health was so poor, right? It's, well, I've got maybe a significant other that doesn't value their health either, so it's harder to make healthier decisions. I haven't invested in, it's all that kind of stuff, to where it would just be a lot. I think it's the difference between mindfulness and mindlessness, as I would have moved down a path that was very mindless, because that's the well-beaten path or the easier path to go on, even though it's to the detriment of my well-being.
Yeah. I love what you said about I would be on this path and I wouldn't even realize it. Like
Right.
that self-awareness would just not be there. And
Right.
it is scary to think about that. Um, and this is why I want to share these stories on the podcast because I really believe that the right people, the right stories, the right books, the right mentors land in front of us at the right moment. And this is what I hope will happen through these stories is like your story will really land with someone who really needs to hear it. And hopefully it will light up that light bulb for someone who is just not seeing this, is just going with the current, like you said, and living like a mediocre life, just existing mindlessly, like you said it so well. Um, if there's someone listening to this and they're like feeling an intuitive nudge and they're stuck and they're not doing the thing or they want to do the thing, but they don't know how to move forward, like what would be one, if you were going to share one piece of wisdom on living intuitively, what would you want to share with someone?
Um, yeah, that's a good question. It reminds me of a question that was asked on a previous podcast a while back when it came to, it makes me think really heavily about taking an inventory of your social circle, and whether it's someone you have a deep connection with or it's someone you have a loose connection with where you see them maybe doing things that you're interested in and they're talking about it online or however you're connected with them, is like leaning into the intuition of asking them, well, just leading with vulnerability, like, hey, like I'm looking for a change in my life, X, Y, and Z. I see you doing some things I'm really interested in. Like, how?
Yeah.
Like, how, and is it possible that you can help me, or can you point me in the direction of somebody? And I know that's an easier said than done thing, especially like relative to what Megan and I are involved in the main in the fitness industry. We're very much outside of the mainstream fitness industry, and there's a lot of people we work with who have asked for help and have been taken advantage of, right? And the key thing there is continuing to trust in asking for help, because you will eventually find the right people to support you. So asking around, asking for help, and not stopping asking for help, because there's no way you're going to get to where you want to go by doing it yourself.
I always say this, no one has ever built success, any kind of success on their own, not even Miss Oprah.
Right.
It's a collaborative effort. So I think that's such a beautiful piece of advice and something we don't dare to do sometimes, to just ask for help or ask for a resource or ask for like a first step.
Yep.
So I really love this. I would love for us to talk a little bit more now about what you do, and also like if someone's listening to this and they're like, oh my god, Patrick just blew my mind today, I need to talk to him, I need to work with him, I need to follow him.
Sure.
um we're going to put all the links in the show notes for where people can find you, but can you tell us a little bit about the work that you do, the work that you have started to do with your beautiful wife Megan, um and where people can connect with you if they want to ask for help?
Yeah, no sweat. So yeah, my name is Patrick Ryan. I'm one of the co-founders and co-owners of Aware Fitness Coaching. And what my wife Megan and I do is we help high performing helpers say fuck you to the mainstream fitness industry. And the reason we go about taking this path is we, through our experience. So my background is in personal training and a lot of mindset work. Megan's background is she is a registered dietitian. And as a result of us both existing for me, in the mainstream fitness industry, and Megan existing in the mainstream healthcare and medical industry, we've gotten a better understanding of how a lot of both of those industries, mainstream industries, are perpetuating a lot of health problems that most people want to get away from and get out of. And we have come to find that the best way to have the largest amount of impact is by supporting what we call high performing helpers. So therapists, pharmacists, doctors, individuals that are working with a lot of people that are also able to see, what, there's a change that needs to be made to these systems if we're really wanting to improve the health of our society. So, like, for context, by the year 2030, so 6 years from now, 50% of the US and UK adult populations will be considered obese. So we're moving not only relative to health metrics, but environmental metrics. There's a lot of health crises that we are going to see come to a very substantial head, and it's going to call to question the systems that have been in place that have made that a reality.
Yeah.
So mine and Megan's emphasis is very heavy on not just the fitness and nutrition front, but very much on the mental and emotional front, and helping these individuals get an understanding of why they behave the way they behave, right? Somewhat similar to my experience that I shared with you. We've got this historical past as far as why we talk to ourselves the way we do, why we make the decisions around food, why we manage our stress the way that we do, and what Megan and I do with our clients is help them understand on a more holistic level what adjustments that they can make to their lifestyle that aren't solely just diet and exercise, that can really help move the needle in the right direction for these individuals. So that way, as a helper helping other people, they're in a more unified, congruent space to help pass the right kind of information down to their clients, their patients, to really help shift the narrative and move the needle in the right direction societally and essentially globally.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Um, as far as how to get connected, a best place to get connected with me is on Instagram. My Instagram handle is Patrick_Ryan Fit, FIT. Outside of that, you could check out the link in my bio. We have a free fitness community that we run free monthly trainings in, that talks more in depth about the topics that we believe need to be more openly talked about and normalized, that we don't see the mainstream fitness industry talking about, to help people establish the consistency they need and really help put it on autopilot.
Oh, I love that you guys have a free community. I didn't know. I'm going right in there after this
Cool.
episode. Um, I think that's so great. And it's because I was just thinking, like, I know when it comes to creating shifts and transformations in our health, it feels so overwhelming sometimes. And I was just going to ask, like, is there an easy way that people can get started with you, just to like start to dip their toes in and allow themselves to take one first step? So I think this is so great. So we'll make sure to um, put the links in the show notes for that. And I mean, I've always felt that you're a very old soul. You're just so full of wisdom, and just listening to you speak is extremely therapeutic. And I'm so honored that you came on the podcast to share your story. I can't wait to get it out to the world, and hopefully for the story to unlock some intuitive nudges for other people, so that they can really value their health and well-being, and make that the starting point for anything else they want to create in their life. I think that's really important.
100%. And by all means, it's been an honor being a part of your show and being able to contribute to the conversations that really need to be had, right? And what's so cool, and chatting with you even before this podcast episode, it's cool to find it takes some trial and error, but it's really cool to find the right kind of people, especially when it comes to normalizing conversations around, in your case, intuition, right? And helping people
Yep.
establish a much healthier relationship with their intuition, because this is something Megan and I see all the time, is there's a lot of negative stigma around feeling in the fitness space, and especially in the entrepreneurial space, where it's like there's no nuanced conversation around helping individuals understand what they're feeling and how that can actually be an asset, not only in their health journey, but how it can be an asset for the growth of their business. In this case, more often than not, we hear people talk about just fuck your feelings. And it's this push down and push through where it's like, that's literally a dimension of your well-being that you're closing off that can help
Yeah.
help you in more ways that you could than you could even imagine. So I applaud you and I thank you for creating a space to have these kinds of conversations that we don't see most people having enough of.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you. And I feel like this is just the start of some collaborations together because I think every time we speak, we get so inspired around these topics. And I agree, we need to talk about them more and put them out into the world so someone else can hear it and give themselves permission to go down this path as well. So I appreciate you so much. And I just can't wait to get this episode out into the world.
Yeah, right there with you. Can I ask a quick favor before we close? Okay.
Okay.
Um, I'd love to take a screenshot of you and I real quick and then post it on my social media to get your name out there to my audience. Is that cool?
Yes, that's so
Okay,
sweet. Thank you.
cool. So let's see if I can. All right, so you can throw a peace sign up or whatever you want. I'll let you know when when I'm gonna shoot it.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna count down from three. Three, two, one. Cool, got it.
Oh, look at this. Look at this Zoom. Zoom puts balloons.
Well,
Okay, let's just take a moment to take in that story. My wish is that it inspires you into the aligned action that you are really ready for. You also don't have to do this alone. Just like my guests have shared about all the incredible people that have supported them along their journey, we are here for you too. If you're ready to uplevel your personal leadership, take big leaps in your life, or take that next leap on your entrepreneurial journey, join us at the School of Intuitive Leadership so that you can experience more ease, flow, joy, abundance, and live in your full brilliance and wake up each day to the life that you really want. Find out more at jenniferjaneyoung.com or at theschoolofintuitiveleadership.com. And participate in this movement with us by sharing an episode that deeply inspired you and leaving us a review. I can't wait to see you on the next episode.